at my husband's 70th birthday banquet. He delivered a tearful speech. When I was 20, I let someone slip away. He said. She was my wife, but we were separated by fate. That has been my regret for half a century. After saying this, he took a marriage certificate out of his pocket. On it were his name and another woman's name. That moment, an elderly woman walked onto the stage from the audience and opened her arms. The two silver-haired individuals embraced and kissed passionately in front of everyone. The kiss was quickly labeled, "The kiss of the century." Furious, I rushed toward the stage, but my son grabbed my arm. "Mom, Emily was invited by me as a special surprise for Dad. He spent half his life devoted to his career. Helping him resolve his regret in love is the least we can do for him." Even my favorite grandson chimed in. "Grandma, don't embarrass yourself. If you step out there, people will think you're just Grandpa's housekeeper." My blood pressure surged from the anger, and I nearly fainted. I could only watch helplessly as my husband and another woman walked off hand in hand. Suddenly, the chandelier overhead came crashing down. Instinctively, I threw myself forward to shield him and was struck dead on the spot. When I woke up, it was 1974. I had been reborn, and so had my husband. "Linda, that pale-faced fiancé of yours carried the unconscious Emily back to your house." A child ran over and shouted. Hearing this, I realized that I had been reborn. Looking down at the tattered cloth shoes and muddy feet by my side, I grabbed my shoes and dashed home barefoot. Before I reached the house, I heard the voice of my fiancé, Michael, faintly through the door. "How are you feeling?" "We've made it back," he said. "This time, life will be better than before." Quietly sobbing, Emily replied, "Michael, why did we return to this point in time? Couldn't it have been a few years later? I'm so scared of living through these days again." "Don't be afraid, Emily," Michael reassured her. "This time, I'll hold on to you tightly and never let you leave my side again. I won't let you suffer anymore." Hesitantly, Emily asked, "But what about Linda? Are you still going to marry her?" Resolutely, Michael declared, "In this life, my wife will only ever be you." A faint smile crossed my lips. So, they had been reborn as well. I barged in and slapped them both. "How dare you hug and cuddle in my house? Have you no shame?" Michael and Emily froze in place. "Linda, what nonsense are you talking about?" Michael shouted angrily. I slapped him again, mud splattering across both their faces. Emily shrieked, "What is this filth? It's disgusting." Glaring at them, I warned, "Don't you dare mess around in my house." Their faces turned bright red with anger, but I didn't care. I returned to the base of the hill to continue making mud bricks. The bricks were already piled high. They were meant to build the marital home. Michael's father had once saved my parents' lives. After his family fell into hardship, they used their last remaining connections to assign Michael to our village during the relocation period. To protect him, his father had proposed a marriage between our families, as my family's poor peasant status made us an ideal match for that time. In my previous life, after marrying Michael, my family gave up everything to support him. We sacrificed all our work points to send him to school. And only 7 years later, after he had secured a job, did he bring me to the city. He became a celebrated professor, while I remained a rustic and uneducated village woman. To his credit, he did not abandon me after moving to the city. And for this, my family was endlessly grateful, treating him like a god. I bore him children, cared for him, and looked after his elderly grandparents, his paralyzed father, and his mother suffering from dementia. I had thought our 50 years together were a model of love and loyalty, but it turned out he had only ever seen me as free labor. The one he truly loved was always Emily, his childhood sweetheart. As I thought of this, I slammed the mud bricks down harder. This house would not be for him. It would be mine. To my surprise, Michael brought Emily to my house for a meal. My father furrowed his brows even deeper and tapped his pipe before saying to my mother, "Cook some more rice and fry some fava beans." Michael, completely unfazed, addressed my father, "Sir, I know this is a hard topic to bring up, but Emily fainted while working today. The conditions at the dorm are poor, and she hasn't been able to rest properly. I'd like to bring her here to stay temporarily." Could you arrange a room for her? Embarrassed, Emily muttered softly. Michael, there's no need to go through so much trouble. The snoring at the dorm is just keeping me up. Maybe it'll get better after a while. I forced myself to endure it. Michael frowned and muttered. Habits like snoring don't go away easily. Linda, figure this out. He spoke to me just as he had in our previous life, as though his words were law. I nearly responded instinctively, but then I looked at the yellowed, crumbling mud walls around me and realized, this time, I didn't have to obey him. I spoke directly. Michael, my family is poor. Look at the house. It's broken down and cramped. Even my 2 older brothers have to squeeze into one small room. Letting you live here back then was already a huge burden. Michael frowned and looked at me sharply. My father smacked me lightly with his pipe. How can you talk to Michael like that? Has he ever complained about how poor we are? The house may be small, but squeezing in is still manageable. Emily can just share a room with you. You two can make it work. Unhappy, I replied. But I snore, too. Won't that disturb her? Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. It's fine, sir, she said softly. I'll just go back to the dorm. Thank you for the trouble. Michael, however, stood firm, scanning the house with a serious expression. Suddenly, he pointed to the attic, where firewood was stored. Clear that out. Emily can move there. Linda can give up her room for Emily. I stared at him in disbelief. My father equally stunned as he glanced at Michael. But after a moment of hesitation, my father nodded. All right. Your mom and I will tidy up the attic later. We'll move the firewood. Anger flared inside me as I stood up. Dad, are you seriously making me live above the pigsty? Taking a puff from his pipe, my father said. Then your mother and I can live there instead. In the end, I was forced to give up my room. After all, I was at the bottom of the household hierarchy. Anyone could boss me around, order me about, or even hit me when they were unhappy. I had no power to resist. That night, I lay in the attic, surrounded by the stench of pig manure wafting up from below and the grunts of the pigs. Confusion and frustration overwhelmed me. Michael, even after being reborn, carried himself with the same sense of superiority as in the previous life. He was accustomed to ordering my family and me around. Even though he didn't want to marry me, he still relied on my family to secure a comfortable life. In the previous life, at least he had the decency to do things covertly, like secretly using my family's resources to care for Emily. This time, however, he brought her straight into our home with bold confidence. It was 1974. 2 years remained until the reinstatement of college entrance exams. For those 2 years, I not only had to support Michael but also his beloved Emily. Unwilling to accept this fate, I found an opportunity to speak privately with my parents. Michael doesn't even like me, I argued. He won't marry me. He's just using our family for convenience. My father's response was swift. He struck me with his pipe and scolded. Linda, where's your conscience? If it weren't for Michael's father saving our family, you wouldn't even be alive today. We owe them a debt of gratitude. As long as Michael hasn't said he's marrying someone else, he's still our son-in-law. Silenced, I could only swallow my frustration. I needed to earn money, even after a full day of labor. I climbed the mountain to cut firewood, intending to carry it to the town to sell. On the way, I ran into Michael and Emily. Emily held a small bouquet of wildflowers mixed with weeds, and Michael carried a large bundle of flowers in his basket. Handing me the basket, Michael said, when you sell the firewood, sell these flowers, too. Emily arranged them herself. They'll fetch a good price. Use the money to buy a few handkerchiefs. I stared at him, speechless. It was 1974. Even selling firewood required caution to avoid trouble. And here he was asking me to sell flowers. Who in their right mind would buy something so useless when people could barely fill their stomachs? I rolled my eyes. Michael, do you even understand what times we're living in? If you're not afraid of getting arrested, go sell them yourself. Emily protested softly. But you're selling firewood. Why can't we sell flowers? I sneered. They'd obviously forgotten the lessons of the previous life. Fine. Go ahead and try. See if the authorities arrest you or not. The two of them exchanged uncertain glances. As I was leaving, I overheard Michael say to Emily, "Emily, still a sensitive time. These flowers can't be sold. Let me make a little garden for you instead." My heart skipped a beat, and I quickened my pace. Rushing home, quietly, I dragged my father to hide with me and watch from a distance. Michael arranged the freshly picked flowers into a circle, creating a wreath for Emily to wear as she lay among the blooms. He twirled around in excitement. "Emily, you're so beautiful. Don't move. I'm going to run home and grab some paper and a pen so I can capture your beauty right now." Michael hurried off, so thrilled that he didn't notice the two of us crouched in the bushes nearby. I turned to my father. "Michael is clearly in love with Emily. Are you asking me to marry him to repay a debt or to create enmity?" I had hoped this scene would change my father's mind, but it only strengthened his resolve to have me marry Michael. That evening, my father handed Michael 15 yuan and 5 fabric ration tickets. "Michael, you and Linda aren't getting any younger. Tomorrow, I'll start building your new house. You and Linda can go to town tomorrow to get your marriage certificate. While you're there, buy some clothes to wear for the wedding." I opened my mouth to protest but said nothing. My heart was cold and heavy. Michael, to my astonishment, didn't object either. He accepted the money and tickets and agreed without hesitation. The next day, Michael and I went to the village office to get the necessary introduction letter for registering our marriage in town. As we were preparing to leave, Michael said, "Linda, don't you have a bundle of firewood to sell? Bring it along." It was supposed to be the day we got our marriage certificate, and my mother had even told me to wear something nicer. Yet here he was, making me haul firewood. How thoughtful. Halfway to town, as expected, we encountered Emily waiting by the roadside. I said nothing, keeping to myself as I walked ahead of them. When we reached the town, Michael turned to me and said, "Linda, give me the introduction letter. I'll handle the paperwork. You should go sell your firewood." I glanced at him and Emily, hesitating for a moment before handing over the letter. Then I went off to sell my bundle of firewood. I had cut it myself, weighing 90 pounds, and carried it 7 kilometers to town. My shoulders were raw and red from the strain. Yet, it only sold for 50 cents. With the coins in hand, I wandered around the local supply store, but there wasn't anything I could afford to buy. Eventually, I made my way to the recycling station. Amid the stench of discarded goods, I rummaged through the piles until I found what I needed. By the time I returned to the meeting spot Michael had mentioned, he waved me off with a look of disdain. "Why do you smell so bad?" Unbothered, I walked to a nearby ditch to clean myself up. As I did, I saw Emily running over, beaming. She wore a white canvas sun hat and waved excitedly. "Michael, look at this hat. Isn't it nice?" It was so hard to get. She also held a white synthetic blouse, holding it up against herself. "Some new clothes just arrived today, and I managed to snag the last 2 pieces." Michael looked at her with indulgent affection. "It looks great, Emily. Really great." I realized then that the money and ration tickets my father had given Michael had been used to buy Emily her new hat and clothes. Silently, I watched them for a while before finally asking Michael, "Where's the marriage certificate? I want to see it." In my previous life, I had also married Michael, since I was illiterate at the time. He had always kept the marriage certificate himself. For 30 years, I never knew that the certificate bore another woman's name. Michael's expression shifted uneasily. "You can't even read. What's the point of showing it to you?" Lifting my chin, I replied, "It's my marriage certificate. Can't I at least take a look?" Annoyed, Michael pulled out the certificate and tossed it at me. "Fine. Look at it. What can a literate woman like you even understand?" I caught the certificate and read it aloud, word by word. Michael, male, 22. Emily, female, 21. Both parties agreed to marry, reviewed and approved in accordance with marriage laws. This certificate is issued. Michael and Emily's faces turned ghostly pale. Emily let out a sharp cry. "You can read. In my previous life, I had been a professor's wife. To be worthy of him, I had taught myself to read and write. This time, I wasn't going to be fooled. While doing housework, I worked hard to learn. Not only did I become literate, but I also learned many other things." Smiling coldly, I turned to Michael and said, You're shameless. Using my family's money to buy things for someone else. Getting a marriage certificate with her. And still pretending to be my family's son-in-law. Do you really think I'm that easy to fool? Michael's face turned even paler. And beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Before he could respond, Emily spoke up. Linda, marriage is free now. Don't think you can use the debt your father owes to trap Michael. We won't yield to that. I looked at Michael and asked slowly, word by word, who owes a debt to whom? The Fong family or the Smith family? If you look down on my family so much, why are you still living in our house and spending our money? How can you be so shameless? Michael stammered. Linda, how did you learn to read? I grinned. Because, just like you, I've been reborn. Hearing my words, Michael let out a sigh of relief and then said reproachfully, Linda, since you've also been reborn, I won't argue with you anymore. In our previous life, I gave you 50 years of a de facto marriage. That should have been enough for you. In this life, I only want to be with Emily. With that, he held Emily's hand affectionately, and the two exchanged a look filled with love. My heart twisted painfully as the humiliation and resentment of the previous life surged in my chest. I had been tricked into being his housemaid for 50 years, and now he acted like those years were his charity to me. Clenching my teeth in anger, I slapped both of them. You two make me sick. Michael, do you think I actually want to marry you? To be your workhorse for life? Why don't you talk about how you lied to me for 50 years? Using a marriage certificate that didn't even have my name on it? If it weren't for my family working day and night to send you to college, do you think you would have graduated so smoothly? Emily snapped angrily. That's enough. Linda, if you've been reborn, then you should know what Michael is destined for. He'll become a celebrated professor with students all over the world. How can you be so selfish and not think about the contributions he'll make to society? Her words struck a bitter chord in me. Just because I was a rural woman, just because I was insignificant, did they think it was perfectly acceptable to exploit my labor while trampling on my dignity? Did they believe that because I hadn't made greater contributions to the world, I deserved to be treated as their stepping stone, to be looked down upon my whole life? Michael exhaled deeply, frowning tightly. All right, Linda, if you feel so wronged, we'll live separately from now on. I'll talk to your father and make it clear that I won't have any more entanglements with you. I laughed and replied, Fine. Michael, I hope you'll keep your word. I knew that if Michael said he wanted to break off all ties, my father would never oppose it. Sometimes, I wondered if Michael had asked for my life instead of my hand in marriage. My father would have agreed without hesitation. The walk home felt light, as though a weight had been lifted. I didn't want to share the same path with them, so I took another route. But when I arrived home, I was stunned to find Michael and Emily still there. My parents looked overjoyed, tears brimming in their eyes as they gazed at the marriage certificate. Finally, we've fulfilled the promise we made to Mr. Smith, my father said emotionally. It was clear what had happened. I was about to speak when Michael grabbed me by the arm and dragged me out of the house. Furious, I confronted Michael. You see that my parents are illiterate, and this is how you deceive them? Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? Michael sighed helplessly. Linda, I have my reasons. Your father has taken care of me for so long, and I just couldn't bring myself to tell him that I married someone else. Besides, my father always said we owed your family a life debt. I thought that if I stayed with your family for these 2 years, I'd find a way to make it up to you later. I sneered. Make it up to me? With what? Everyone in the village knows I'm married to you. When you leave for college and move back to the city, I'll be the woman you abandoned. How will my parents face the villagers? How will I live with the shame? Looking him straight in the eye, I continued, Michael, if we're reliving this life, you should know that whether you marry me or not won't change your status or opportunities. Why cling to my family like a leech? And as for that so-called life debt, give me a number. Let's settle it once and for all. I don't want you clinging to this debt for the rest of your life while draining the blood from my entire family. Michael's face darkened. Linda, how can you think of me that way? I'm not that kind of person. You are that kind of person. I cut him off coldly. Since you've married Emily, don't try to involve me anymore. Michael tried to say something else, but his face suddenly grew pale. My father appeared behind me, his expression grim. I didn't know how much he had overheard, but he smoked his pipe all night before making a decision. The next day, he announced that our newly built house would be given to Michael and Emily to live in. He also promised to provide them with 20 pounds of grain every month until Michael left for college, fulfilling the dying wish of Michael's father. Until the new house was ready, Michael and Emily would continue living with us. Michael insisted that no one in the village should know about his marriage to Emily until after they had passed their college entrance exams. My family agreed, finally free of this arranged marriage. I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. I threw myself into my work with renewed vigor. In my spare time, I took the 2 yuan I had painstakingly saved and went to the village carpenter. I asked him to make me a few wooden boards so I could build a winnowing machine. In my previous life, whenever I finished my housework, I loved watching the agricultural channel. I was fascinated by videos of innovative farmers improving tools, and I had even tried making some of those tools myself. Back then, my creations always ended up as toys for my children. But now, the knowledge I had gained was finally useful. 3 days later, my first winnowing machine was completed and brought to the village's drying ground. The villagers watched in amazement as I effortlessly poured a 100-pound sack of rice into the machine, which quickly separated the clean grains from the chaff and debris. Even a 10-year-old child could operate it with ease, and it didn't scatter dust like the old machines, sparing everyone from being covered in dirt and sneezing incessantly. The village leader, thrilled with the results, tested it multiple times before announcing that I would make 20 more for the village. I would earn 10 work points a day, wouldn't need to provide the wood, and would receive 1 yuan for each machine I completed. When my parents heard the news, their faces lit up with joy. Michael, standing among the crowd, looked at me with a complicated expression. I paid him no mind. Next, I helped improve the threshing machines. The new design cleaned the rice thoroughly and operated efficiently, allowing an acre's worth of rice to be threshed in just over 10 minutes. The village leader was so pleased that he postponed the entire village's harvest schedule, waiting for me to finish upgrading all the threshing machines. Before long, even people from neighboring villages came to ask for my help in improving their machines. I had wanted to create a long-handled sickle to make harvesting rice easier, but I was too busy to start that project. Just as the farm work was wrapping up, someone from the machinery factory came looking for me. I took a different path home and saw a broken-down tractor on the roadside. It had been in use for years and was practically scrap, made worse after it tumbled off the embankment. A group of men had been trying to fix it for hours, but the tractor remained silent. Frustrated, they eventually sat down, clutching their heads in despair. I approached them, claiming to be a technician. After spending the better part of the day tinkering with the tractor, I managed to get it working again. I used some copper wires and screws I had salvaged from the recycling station to replace worn-out parts. When the tractor operator drove it to the machinery factory for maintenance, the factory director noticed the modifications I had made. He saw potential in me and offered me a temporary job at the factory. Naturally, I agreed. 3 months later, our family's new house was finished, and due to my exceptional performance, I was officially hired by the machinery factory. Around this time, Michael and Emily came looking for me. Michael hesitated for a while before finally speaking. "Linda, do you think you could give your job at the factory to Emily?" I was taken aback but immediately shook my head. Michael quickly added, "Linda, think about it. Talk to the factory director. Emily studied engineering in our past life. She's much more suited to this position than you are." I raised an eyebrow. "Aren't you two planning to take the college entrance exams? Why are you suddenly interested in my ordinary factory worker job?" Emily lifted her chin and replied arrogantly, "You're a rural woman. Even in this life, farm work is easy for you. But for me and Michael, we're intellectuals. Doing heavy manual labor like this would only waste our time. We need to use these 2 years wisely by working in technical positions before going to college." After she finished speaking, Michael nodded in agreement, his expression full of approval. I knew from our past life that Michael had studied Chinese education in college, a field that offered him no particular advantage now. Smiling coldly, I responded, "If you two think you're so talented, then go compete for the position yourselves. Why steal mine? Are you such esteemed intellectuals that you can't even outdo an illiterate like me?" Michael sighed and said, "Linda, You should understand that we're like tigers fallen to flatland, now being bullied by dogs. Can't you help us out? I gave him a sidelong glance. I can't. Before I could walk away, a stern voice came from behind me. It was my father. He looked at Michael and said seriously, Michael, I agree that Linda should give you this job, but only to you. This will be how our family repays your family's life debt. Michael stared at my father for a moment, then nodded. Thank you, Mr. Fong. I stepped forward, protesting. Dad, I don't agree. My father slapped me across the face. What I've decided doesn't require your approval. In the end, I still went to work at the factory, and Emily joined too. Her job was one I had to personally request from the factory director. To secure it, I handed over 2 designs for improving agricultural machinery. Only then did the director agree to give her a position. My father had insisted that the job be given to Michael, but within a month, Michael handed it over to Emily. The factory director turned a blind eye because of my contributions. Later, I told my father that transferring the job should count as settling my debt to him for raising me. My father flew into a rage, cursing me for being ungrateful, wiping away my tears. I said firmly, Dad, you were the one who received the life debt, and you used me to repay it. I've paid it back in full. What more do you want from me? From now on, I'll make my own decisions. At the factory, I focused on learning and working, using the knowledge I had gained in my previous life. I made several small inventions, immersing myself in work I loved. A year passed in the blink of an eye. When I returned to the village with a newly improved threshing machine, I stumbled upon Michael and Emily holding their wedding ceremony. Their marital home was the very house I had built with my own hands. My father busied himself enthusiastically with preparations for Michael and Emily's wedding, his face glowing with joy, as if Michael were his own son. I had often wondered why, in my previous life, I was so blindly devoted to the Smith family. Now, I realized it was largely because my father had drilled it into me every single day. He used to say I was just an ordinary rural woman with no real skills, and that marrying a college student was a blessing he had brought to me. He told me I needed to be grateful, diligent, obedient, and resilient. A woman's happiness, he'd say, depends on her husband's success. If he prospers, you'll benefit too. Endure the hardship now, and you'll enjoy the rewards later. But I endured an entire lifetime of hardship, only to end up without even the right to stand beside my husband. When Michael saw me return, his expression turned wary, as though he was afraid I'd disrupt his wedding. I merely smiled and congratulated them. Congratulations on finding your true match. Then, I asked curiously, Michael, in our previous life, you could have divorced me early on and openly been with Emily. Why didn't you? Michael's face darkened, and he said nothing. A sudden realization struck me. In our previous life, Michael had only brought me to the city when his grandparents fell ill, leaving them bedridden, while his parents were busy with work. Around the same time, Emily had gone abroad. I finally understood. My greatest value to him had been as a caregiver for his family. Not long after, news broke of the reinstatement of the college entrance exams. Both Michael and Emily took the exams and were admitted to college. Shortly after, Emily became pregnant. I heard rumors that the two of them had a heated argument because Emily wanted to terminate the pregnancy. However, the doctor refused to perform the procedure, saying it would be too dangerous for her. One day, I returned to the village and saw Michael holding Emily tightly. He was pleading with her. Emily, this child is the symbol of our love. Can you really bear to get rid of it? It's just 1 year of delay in your studies. Don't you know there's a life inside you? He promised her. Once I start college, I'll come back to see you whenever I can. After you have the baby, we'll leave the child with my mom, and you can go back to school. How about that? Tears streamed down Emily's face as she sobbed. Do you know how hard I worked to get that score? To get into the school and major I've always dreamed of? And now you're asking me to stay home and have a baby? Michael, you're so selfish. Do you think getting into college is easy? Next year, there'll be more applicants, and the exams will be even harder. Don't you understand that? Michael continued to coax her. Emily, can't you make just a small sacrifice for our future? I couldn't help but laugh. In the previous life, he had asked me to sacrifice. Now, It was Emily's turn. Emily pushed him away angrily. You want me to sacrifice? Why don't you make the sacrifice instead? That moment, the sound of a bicycle bell broke through the tension. The mailman had arrived, bringing their acceptance letters. Michael and Emily rushed to grab their letters, eagerly tearing them open. After reading hers, Emily carefully put it away, then snatched Michael's letter and ripped it into shreds. The mailman and I stood frozen, stunned by what we had just witnessed. Michael's voice cracked as he screamed, Emily, what are you doing? Do you know what that was? That was my college acceptance letter. He scrambled to gather the torn pieces, trying desperately to piece them back together. But it was hopeless. I stood by, whistling softly. Emily, for once, had truly outdone herself. Coldly, Emily sneered, Michael, I won't be able to go to college, but neither will you. I didn't bother watching the rest of their drama. Instead, I handed part of my savings to my mother and returned to work at the machinery factory. Eventually, Michael boarded the train to report to school, but he couldn't convince Emily to go with him. She refused, leaving Michael no choice but to entrust her care to my family. My father, ever eager to please, readily agreed. Before Michael left, he came to see me one last time. Linda, can you keep an eye on Emily while you're in the city? She's been emotionally unstable, and I'm worried something might happen to her. I refused coldly. Your problems are not my responsibility. Michael frowned in frustration. Linda, no matter what, we were married for 50 years. Do you have to be this heartless? I stared at him icily. Michael, you yourself said we were married for 50 years. Yet, at your birthday banquet, you publicly declared that your true love had always been Emily, after treating me like nothing more than a glorified maid. How dare you talk to me about feelings now? Michael had nothing left to say and left dejectedly. Shortly after Michael departed, Emily sold her job position and disappeared. Somehow, Michael got word of this and returned from school in a frenzy, desperately trying to track her down. He searched her hometown and visited every relative she had, but it was all in vain. 3 months later, a baby was left at his family's doorstep with a note in the swaddling blanket. The letter claimed the baby was his son and warned him to stop searching for Emily. Michael, now holding the child, seemed on the verge of losing his mind. At that time, his parents were still out of work, and as a college student with no income, he was entirely dependent on my father to provide for him. Now, with a baby to care for, things only got worse. Michael hadn't returned to school for a long time, and the university warned him that if he didn't come back soon, he would be expelled. Left with no other options, Michael brought my father and the baby to find me. As soon as my father saw me, he said with a wide grin, Daughter, Michael's wife ran off, and now he needs someone to take care of the child. Why don't you come home and help him? Hearing his words, my heart sank. Michael, unshaven and disheveled, added, Linda, I'm out of options. After thinking it through, I can only entrust the baby to you. You're a woman. You know how to care for a child. Please, help me. I'll be forever grateful to you. I refused icily. I have my own work and career to focus on. If you need someone to take care of your child, hire a nanny. Michael lowered his head, but my father raised his pipe, ready to hit me. This time, I snatched the pipe from him mid-swing. I had never fought back before, not because I couldn't, but because I chose to endure. Furious, my father yelled, You're a woman. What career could you possibly have? In the end, you'll still get married, have kids, and take care of a household. If you don't take care of this child, who will? Your 2 brothers are married with children, and your mother and I don't have the time or energy. It's your duty. He added threateningly, If you don't do as I say, I'll come to your factory every day and cause trouble until your boss fires you. Michael joined in, pleading, Linda, I'm begging you, just help me through this rough patch, and I'll repay you. Whatever kind of job you want in the future, I'll help you get it. I shook my head. No, you can't help me, just as I can't help you. And Father, this is the last time I'll call you that. I've repaid everything I owed you. When you grow old, I'll take care of you and Mother, but I won't listen to you anymore. So don't come looking for me again. I closed the door in their faces. leaving them outside. By now, I had been promoted to engineer at the factory. There were still many concepts I didn't fully understand, so I spent every spare moment reading and learning. I had no time to deal with trivial matters like this. Later, when I returned to the village, I heard that Michael had been expelled from college. He now lived in the village, struggling to raise his child alone. Both of my older brothers were already married with children, so even if my father wanted to support Michael, he had no extra money to spare. He could only work harder, earning labor points through backbreaking work. But for those who scraped by working the land, it was never enough. It was like trying to fill an ocean with a cup of water. 3 years later, Emily returned. This time, it was to divorce Michael. After giving birth to their child, she had found someone else, someone over 20 years older than her, whom she claimed was her true love. She said she had lived 2 lifetimes and finally realized who she truly loved. Naturally, Michael refused to agree to the divorce. During one of their arguments, Emily pushed him, and he fell into a ditch, breaking his leg. Now disabled, Michael was left even more helpless. Emily tried to flee but was caught by the villagers. After much back and forth, Emily paid Michael a substantial amount in compensation, and after dragging things out for a while, the two finally divorced. Not long after, Michael sent someone to deliver a message to me. He admitted that he had been wrong, that I was the one he truly loved, and that he wanted to get a marriage certificate with me and hold a proper wedding. I sent back a simple reply: "Go to hell." I had already broken free from the chains that once bound me. I was soaring in a sky of my own. Yet he still wanted to drag me back to his personal hell under the guise of love. I couldn't be bothered with him anymore. I had also come to understand that for people like Michael and my father, the greatest revenge I could take was to no longer obey them, to no longer listen to their commands. Simply living my own life well was the best way to defeat them.